Hello everyone, my name is Haley Bordelon and I'm the head of the Multimedia Department for the Conglomerate this year. Today we're introducing a new segment called Ask the Professor, where we talk to professors about things that have impacted them so we can get to know them a little better as students outside of class. We're looking forward to introducing new stuff this year, and I hope you guys really enjoy. Hi Dr. Hendricks.
How are you doing, Emily?
I'm good, how are you?
Doing well.
First off, thanks for being part of this segment. We're really glad to have you here for the Congo.
Well, it's always a good moment to be able to help the Congo. I was a feature writer back during the 1970s.
A long time ago.
A long time ago.
So we have you today to for you to explain to us and then the viewers some movies that help shape you, influence you into who you are today.
Okay. As probably most people know, here at the college I teach literature but also film studies, and film was one of the shaping influences on me when I was young. I grew up during the 1960s, really, when I kind of came to consciousness then, and we only had 3 TV stations, and they went off about 10 or 11 at night. But there were still movies on them, and so as a young kid, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, and so we watched TV a good bit. And so I began to be shaped by that, and I began to really be influenced by storytelling. And so what attracts me to film, on one level, are the stories they tell. And so there have been a few films. You'd asked me before the interview which films maybe had influenced me. So I thought about it for a while, and I've come up with 3 or 4 today. And I'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay, cool.
The first one was The Wizard of Oz, which
really?
I assume almost everybody has seen.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, you really need to see that at some point in your life. So the question was, why did it influence me? And I saw it early in life, maybe when I was 8 or 9, maybe even younger. And I think, of course, at first the monkeys were very scary. The Wicked Witch of the West was definitely scary. And so on one level, it taught me about the concept of evil. Perhaps it was that film that made me so anxious about aliens and creatures. And so I had this love of the fantastic, but also this kind of anxiety about it. While I consider myself an absolute rationalist, I still jump at things that go bump in the night. And if I'm up here working at Jackson Hall late at night and the lights get turned off while I'm leaving, I get a little anxious walking down the dark hallway.
It's spooky in here, though, late at night.
And I keep expecting to see one of those flying monkeys come at me. But The Wizard of Oz also is about a lot more than that, as people know. And one thing that was interesting to me looking back on it, reflecting back as a film teacher, is I really identified with Dorothy.
Okay.
Even as a guy, right?
Oh, okay.
And it's a young woman heroine, but she is a hero in the best sense of the word, because she's just a normal person, but she has to do extraordinary things. And she has to show extraordinary courage to go up against the Wicked Witch. And she has to show leadership in organizing her little band of creatures. And so it really was a very inspirational sort of scene there. That whole movie and what it taught me as a young person, 8 or 9, how it inspired me. Of course, ultimately she returns home and she becomes basically a child again with her grandparents there. And she, of course, says there's no place like home. But that's not the part that really shaped me so much as her journey. Okay. Right? Her journey into becoming a hero. And so, frankly, my life after seeing that has been on that journey. Another movie that shaped me, too, in some similar ways, I think I saw it when I was also 7 or 8, 1960 it came out, and it was The Alamo, starring John Wayne. Okay. And every Texas student here, of course, knows the story of the Alamo.
Definitely.
But what I found so powerful about that at that age, again, was the concept of bravery, heroism, but really that concept of fighting against overwhelming odds and never giving up, just never giving up, even when you know you're going to lose, even when you know there are 4,000 people on that side of the wall and you have a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
And your ability to still stay focused and strong and fight to the finish made a big impression on me. And later in life, I would read literature that would be along the same lines. Dylan Thomas's poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night, but fight against the dying of the light." Another sort of rendition of that same sensibility. That theme of not giving up and of keeping going really was very powerful for me. And so John Wayne, who is these days a very complicated figure, still when I was a child, he was definitely one of my heroes in what he represented in a role like that. But also Jim Bowie, who was there as well in that film. But so as a young child who was getting involved in sports and just sort of forming myself, those films had a kind of similar path for me. They were both heroic stories. A few years later in high school, maybe my junior year, sophomore year, I saw something radically different that also shaped me. It was a British musical called Goodbye, Mr. Chips, based on a 1930s novel of that same title, about an older schoolmaster at a high school, public school they call it, in England, who is a very serious, dry, staid character, and his students called him Ditchy, as in dried up dishwater. It was a real diss of Ditchy. So they were really disliked him and satirized him all the time, until he met this young music hall woman, and he fell in love with her, and she fell in love with him. And the story is very much about how that relationship brought him out of this kind of dead, sometimes sour, ultimately kind of crusty sensibility, and he became a whole different person.
Oh, wow.
It was an extremely romantic story.
I bet.
And I did see it with my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife, my high school girlfriend. But we saw it together, but it really appealed to me, that whole English scene there in high school, in the public school, which is a reason that I spent my junior year abroad. I was at Centenary, but I went to England my junior year as an English major to live in that atmosphere, to kind of relive the scene of that very powerful film. If the first two films, The Wizard of Oz and the Alamo, were about becoming a hero, but about being strong in the face of adversity or overwhelming odds, Goodbye, Mr. Chips was very much about opening your heart and opening yourself to the possibility of relationships and connections with others. Though Goodbye, Mr. Chip ended tragically,
really?
As his wife got killed. It was set during World War II, and the Germans were bombing England, and she was performing at an Air Force base near the school, and a bomb hit it and she died. So the end of the film was a throwback to the other two movies I'm talking about. So even though the great love of his life had died, he kept carrying on with the memory and with the influence of that love in his heart. So he too, against a kind of tragic conclusion, stayed strong, and but it was love that gave him that life. Yeah. So those are three films that shaped me when I was actually a little bit younger than you are now. These were all things from when I was maybe 7 or 8 up through high school. So I came into Centenary in the fall of 1971 as a student with those kind of ideas having shaped me, and then I've gone on from there.
So it very much helped make you into the professor you are now.
Well, they are things I still think about,
Mm-hmm.
and things that definitely the ideas are still very much part of who I am. So I think one of the interesting things as a student is to think about the things that are shaping you. Of course, it's hard to see them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Yeah.
have that consciousness at that time.
Say at that time,
Yeah,
you don't really know.
No, it had to be when I got older and I thought back and made sense of it. But I think it's very interesting that all of you are going through experiences right now that you'll look back onto and you go, wow, this is why I'm like I am.
That's why that happened.
That shaped me. And you may like stuff right now, but you may not exactly know why.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's an interesting journey. Good luck with it.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Hendricks.
Absolutely, Emily.